this is the third annual forum, right?
Yes.
So, what can you give us an overview of this forum?
Okay. So this is the third Ghana Research Industry Collaborative Forum, or GRIC Forum. It brings together researchers from across Ghana's applied research institutions like CSIR, higher education institutions, universities, technical universities, researchers who have done research that could be commercially viable or that businesses could use to create products or services that could be useful for society and also profitable. And the goal of the forum is to explore how we can get more research out of labs and out of shelves into businesses and into our country so that we can have more profitable businesses, more innovative businesses, and more impact.
So one of the issues that was raised had to do with commercialization of research. Where is the gap in Ghana? How do we address that?
So there are a lot of efforts to increase commercialization in Ghana. For example, GRIC as a platform helps researchers to put their research into industry-friendly language. So take out all the scientific terms and use regular language so people understand what the research is and what it can do for a business. And also to include with that information about the business case for the research. How can a business actually use this research to make money? And then we organize industry briefings. These industry briefings are sessions where we invite relevant businesses and other organizations who could use a specific research to hear about it so that they can decide whether they want to use it or not. And finally, we do technology transfer advice. This is where we have specialists that can advise the researcher and the business. How do you structure an agreement between the researcher and the business to be able to actually see that business using the research? So far, we've had over 100 research put into industry-friendly formats. We've had about 12 research briefings where 12 really great research has been presented to over 600 businesses. And we've had a good number of those businesses express interest in using the research. And we have about 6 cases where businesses are actually working with researchers commercializing. So we are beginning to see some progress. And even before our efforts, there have been a lot of efforts by other institutions, the CSIR and others to commercialize research. So what we are doing is just augmenting what's already going on in the ecosystem.
How different are you expecting this year's edition to be from previous years?
So this is the third year. In the previous years, the very first year, we just looked at what's the problem and what are some potential solutions. Year 2, we brought some of the solutions to the markets, like the industry brief sessions. Year 3, we actually have cases of commercialization. So you can see how starting off by just saying, okay, we have a problem. How do we solve it? We've been able to build on it. And we are hoping that year 4 and 5 and onwards, we'll see more scaling of solutions. Now we'll be looking at not 6 research works, but 20, 100, many research works that are commercially viable, that are being used by businesses.
So, which areas are we looking at in terms of the research and where the success stories are?
So a lot of the research is related to agriculture, agri-processing, and I think that's because of the nature of our economy. We have some research that's using artificial intelligence to do things like traceability in the cocoa value chain, research that's extending the shelf life of products. So a lot of agribusiness, agri-processing, using technology to support various industries, the cocoa industry, and we're looking to see even more of these things come out. We see a lot.
My last question would be, how much in terms of investment is going into all of this endeavor?
So we see some investments, but it's very little. Most of it is grant funding. Some of it is informed by the fact that by the time you are taking a research to commercialize, it's early stage. And so, sometimes we are still testing the business case, but we want to see a full spectrum of capital where you have some of the very early stage innovations. And we're really excited about the government's National Research Fund, as well as the Ministry of Communications and Digitization and Innovation Startup Bill, that also goes with a fund, and efforts by the Ministry of Trade and Industry around trade policy, industrial policy, that also comes with funding. And all these things we're hoping can be harnessed by researchers and businesses that are using these research to be able to get funding for some of the very early stage work. And then we hope commercial money will come in once there's a clear business case and we can see where the profits will come from.
All right, thank you.
Speaking of funding, one thing that came up in the previous discussion was that despite years of advocacy, budgetary allocation to R&D is pretty negligible. What are your thoughts on this, and how do you contain this around?
So we're really excited to see some commitment from the government. I think at the forum they talked about the 1 million commitment made by the President, the Arise Initiative, the National Research Fund, and others. The thing is that we need to, as a country, increase our tax revenues. And how do we do that? We do that by having more viable businesses that pay our taxes. We do that by having a more customer-friendly tax authority so that we're actually mobilizing money. And then we can begin to say, out of all the priorities of government, health, education, how much should go to R&D so that we can spare more businesses. So there isn't a simple answer because there's always a trade-off. As you're funding more research, you're funding less of something else. And so we need to look at the conversation in a holistic way so that we can really mobilize funding. And I believe that reforming our tax authority to make it more customer friendly so that people don't evade taxes because they don't want to be harassed, but they find an agency that's willing to work with businesses to maximize the taxes that governments can collect. And we don't have a lot of informality that is driven by just the stress people have in dealing with government agencies and with tax authorities.